At some point or another, when shooting film, there comes a desire to move to a larger format. From 35mm, the obvious jump is to 120. 120 film offers a larger negative. These negatives store more information and offer you the medium format look. As well, 120 comes in a range of different sizings, from 6x5 all the way up to 6x17, with the most common formats being 6x6 and 6x7. However, medium format comes with a price. For the film and development, the prices are usually about the same, if not a little more, depending on where you go and what you buy. Also, the amount of frames you get on medium format film will be always less than what you get on 35mm. Typically with 35mm, you're getting 36 frames. As for medium format though, it can range between as little as 4 frames, as much as 16. This all depends on which format you're shooting though. When it comes from medium format cameras, you can end up spending a couple $100s to a couple $1,000, depending what you're going for. The Pentax 672, the Mamiya 7, and Hasselblads are all cameras that will cost you over a couple $1,000s. There is an option though for you to get into medium format photography and not break the bank. Folding cameras were first introduced by Kodak over 100 years ago. Unfortunately though, those cameras may still be operational, but the film that they need to shoot is no longer available. That being said though, 120 film has been around since 1901, so there's plenty of cameras still out there that can use it. Agfa, Zeiss, and Kodak all produced multiple cameras from the 1930s through the 1950s that used 120 film. These cameras range from focus-free to zone focus to the more complex rangefinder cameras of the time. Currently I own 2 Zeiss folding cameras. The first being a Zeiss Ikon Nettar 517 and the second being a Zeiss Ikon Nettar 515. The Nettar 515 is a 6.45 camera, while the Nettar 517 is a 6x6 camera. Both these cameras come with dedicated viewfinders and are zone focused exclusively, which was common with the Nettar models. The Ikonta models, which were higher end, were usually paired with the rangefinder. As you'll probably tell in this video, zone focusing isn't my strength. I miss focus quite a bit. To start off, I loaded up the Nettar 515 with some Kodak Gold, and I would follow that up with some Tri-X 400. As well, for the Nettar 517, I would load that up with some Tri-X 400 as well. I feel the Nettar 515 is a nicer camera, offering a wider aperture as well as multiple shutter speeds up to 1/75 of a second, including both a bold mode and a timer mode. The Nettar 517 though only offers 4 selections for shutter speeds and a slower aperture of f6.3. Those shutter speeds are only bold mode, 1/25 of a second, 1/75 of a second, and 200th of a second. These slower shutter speeds and smaller apertures can be quite limiting, but still these cameras are capable of producing some really nice photos. Also, when it comes to older cameras, there's issues you need to look out for, especially with these folding cameras. First things first is you want to check to see if the bellows are good. The easiest way to do this is to open up the back of the camera, look in the back, and shine a flashlight around the bellows to see if there's any light protruding through. If you start seeing little pinholes of light coming seeping through, it means your bellows are bad. If you're not seeing any light coming through though, you're all good and ready to shoot. However though, there is another problem that can occur. On these older cameras, the shutter speeds can end up lagging if not completely seizing up at certain shutter speeds. Unfortunately, with the Nettar 515, every shutter speed from 1/10 of a second and below will completely seize up and not fire correctly. However though, I don't use those shutter speeds ever when I'm using these cameras, so it's not really a loss for me. Another note about these old cameras is a lot of them come with uncoated lenses. If you're unfamiliar with what it means for a lens to be uncoated, it basically means the lens will produce a more dull, desaturated look and also be more prone to flaring in harsher lighting conditions. For color film, this results in more classic, vintage, antique looking photos that can be really stylistic, I feel. And for black and white, it's not that much of a problem. I usually just tend to add contrast in post anyways, just to make my images stand out a little more. As well, you can always add color filters to your black and white images to increase contrast as well, if you're not wanting to do that digitally in post. After hearing all this, you're probably wondering, why would I even pick up one of these cameras? What's the point? Seems like it's more hassle than it's worth. Honestly, sometimes I wonder why I keep these around too. But then again, there's such a tactile experience of using these cameras that really make you stop and think when producing an image. These cameras aren't holding your hands. They really are just kind of a big guessing game when it comes to taking a photograph. Focusing, you kind of have to know distance. The viewfinder may not even be calibrated or right. Shutter speeds, you're limited. Your apertures, they're small. And to top it off, there's no light meter in sight. With all that being said though, when you're taking a photo, you're 100% concentrated on taking the photo. This isn't for running and gunning style shooting. You're really having to stop and set everything up and really kind of think about it, which I think is a good exercise when it comes to taking photography. There's something special about these cameras though, where you have to stop and think about the moment you're going to capture. It's more of a slowed down, methodical process. You're really having to do everything yourself and really think about it. Basically, there's an experience when using these cameras. You really gotta just be hands-on and be 100% committed to taking the photo. You can't be distracted, and that's why I keep coming back to these cameras from time to time. If I haven't scared you off of these cameras though, but you really just hate zone focusing like I do, there is a cheat sheet on these cameras though. Zeiss has marked down 2 red dots on this camera for hyperfocal distance. The first dot's going to be on the aperture ring and sits right around f10, and the second dot sits on the focusing ring somewhere around 24 feet. If you set both these dials to these red dots, it acts as a focus free point. In general, this will make your focus point somewhere between 15 feet and 30 feet, and have your foreground and background be slightly out of focus. However, that's just the settings on the 2 cameras I have. These could be different on other models. Again, if I haven't scared you off from these cameras, here comes the enticing point. All these cameras you can get for less than $50. And again, there's plenty of different styles, makes, and models you can find. You don't have to get these Zeiss ones. I just bought it because then I can just basically tell everybody, I have a Zeiss camera, even though it doesn't have the Zeiss lens. But it's still a Zeiss no matter what. So if zone focusing really isn't your thing, for about double the price, you can get a camera with a rangefinder. Again, all these cameras are old and subject to basically different issues, and that includes the rangefinder not being accurate. But it is an option, and it is cheaper than a lot of other cameras out on the market. Is it likely you'll buy one of these folding cameras and fall in love with it so much so that you'd never want to venture further into medium format photography? It's unlikely. Will these cameras give you a unique shooting experience with some vintage looking negatives? You betcha. Will this video break me into YouTube celebrity status? I doubt it.